Welcome, the chosen ones. One cold decision at the right moment can reshape more futures than 1,000 warm debates. You just made a move so calculated, so ruthless in its precision, that your way of thinking has officially entered the room as a weapon of mass implication. It's not that you acted too quickly, it's that you calculated too deeply. And that right there, that's what's got people losing sleep at night. See, research shows that 95% of daily decisions are made on autopilot, leaving most people predictable and easy to outmaneuver. But you dropped one decision so sharp, it bypassed every defense they had built. You didn't hesitate, you executed the plan. Now people aren't trying to figure out what you want anymore. They're trying to recover from what you already did. You've turned strategy into a weapon of psychological dominance. You've proven that when a cold decision meets total clarity, it hits harder than any emotional reaction ever could. And the best part, you didn't even flinch. You just upgraded your decision-making process while they were still second-guessing theirs. Suddenly, every choice you make carries the weight of inevitability. So when they say your strategy is terrifying, take it as a badge of honor. Because what they really mean is this. You've reached a level where your decisions don't just change things, they end them. Let's break down exactly why your strategic coldness has become unstoppable, and why those who underestimated your decisiveness are now learning that calculated moves, when fully committed, destroy more opposition than aggression ever could. Number one, you stopped second-guessing, and that shattered their entire counter-strategy. They didn't just want to understand you. They needed your uncertainty to feel safe. Every doubt, every moment of hesitation, every sign of fear was designed to give them an opening, because your doubt was their roadmap. The moment you decided with absolute clarity, their world started to crumble. They were never prepared for a version of you that could see the entire board without blinking. Your certainty wasn't arrogance, it was annihilation. It was the kind of resolve that exposes wishy-washy thinking for what it really is, weakness dressed up as caution. They had built their sense of control on knowing you'd hesitate. They counted on your overthinking, your need for consensus, your fear of judgment. But when you began to decide with ice-cold precision, you rewrote the entire game. Suddenly, they were lost in their own overanalysis, trying to predict someone who no longer doubts. You evolved right in front of them, and they didn't have the spine to evolve with you. There's a power that comes from realizing not every decision needs committee approval. You learned that some choices are traps, disguised as risks to avoid. You realized that second-guessing keeps you in a life you no longer want. The real win is deciding knowing your clarity is louder than their noise. When you stopped hesitating, they didn't just lose your approval, they lost their footing. And for people who feed on others' indecision, that's worse than defeat. That's when you truly became a threat. Because nothing scares strategic people more than someone who decides first and deals with the aftermath later. They can't talk you out of it, can't delay you, can't make you reconsider anymore. They're left questioning their own approach. And you moved forward coldly, calculated, powerfully. It's not that you stopped thinking, it's that you started executing. You decided your future was too important to hand over to people who thrive on keeping you stuck in analysis paralysis. That's a level of strategic boldness that few ever reach. You didn't win by debating longer, you won by deciding first. You made conviction your counterattack, and that's what turned your decision into dominance and your clarity into a dynasty. Number two, you became the player they can't read. For a long time they thought they had you figured out. When you'd hesitate, how you'd overthink, how to stall you. They studied your patterns like a manual, believing if they repeated the same pressure, they'd get the same paralysis. But somewhere along the way you stopped being readable. You upgraded mentally. You started seeing through the tactics they used to keep you frozen, and that made their entire system obsolete. They relied on the old version of you, the one that wavered too long, needed too much input, and apologized for prioritizing yourself. But the moment you started committing instead of contemplating, they lost their leverage. Your mind became surgical, decisive, impossible to anticipate. Every move you made came with conviction beneath doubt, speed beneath caution, action beneath planning. They tried to stall you using old tactics, and it backfired spectacularly. They couldn't figure out what version of you they were dealing with anymore, because you became what every hesitant person fears, a decision-making machine with no off switch. When people can no longer calculate your next move, they panic. Control requires hesitation. It requires knowing you'll wait so they can position themselves. But you started making moves that defied their timeline. You executed when they thought you'd stall. You committed when they expected you to renegotiate. You walked away when they thought you'd chase. Every choice you made broke the rhythm they depended on. You didn't just outmaneuver them, you out-evolved them. That's the kind of strategic power that can't be faked. You're no longer indecisive. You're decisive. You move with purpose, not anxiety. And that makes your strategy dangerous to anyone who thrives on your second guessing. They're left trying to play chess against someone who's already 3 moves ahead. You became a force of your own, self-propelled, self-directed, and unapologetically focused. Now they can't influence you, can't stall you, and definitely can't reverse you. You've become a force of nature that doesn't slow down out of doubt, but out of pure momentum. The same mind they dismissed as too impulsive is now the one they can't outrun. And that's what makes your decision-making a weapon. It's no longer a tool for getting by. It's a system of destruction. Number 3, your ruthlessness became the ultimate power move. When you got ruthless, you did more than push forward. You eliminated their entire excuse factory. They were used to you second-guessing, overthinking, and asking for permission you never needed. Every time you reconsidered, rationalized, or softened your stance, they were winning. They thrived on keeping you in a perpetual state of maybe because your conviction kept their advantage alive. But when you finally committed ruthlessly, mentally, strategically, and completely, you took the ammunition out of their arguments. Ruthlessness doesn't mean you stopped thinking. It means you stopped apologizing for your conclusions. You began to see how every moment of hesitation was being used against you. You realized that your caution was being treated like a liability in a game designed to keep you small. So you made the move that terrifies the passive-aggressive the most. You stopped negotiating with yourself. You refused to water down your vision. You committed without announcement. And that was the shift that changed everything. Your ruthlessness exposed how dependent they were on your doubt. Without your hesitation, they lost their advantage. Without your overthinking, they felt exposed. Without your permission, their objections had no weight. They started scrambling to recreate the doubt you used to live in, but it didn't work anymore. You stopped wavering and they were left running on empty. That's the part they'll never admit. That your certainty feels like a shutdown because it reveals how powerless they truly are without your self-sabotage. The strength it takes to be ruthless is misunderstood. People think it's cold or heartless, but in truth it's the highest form of self-trust. It's choosing growth over comfort. It's refusing to let your dreams be talked down by people who only show up to keep you mediocre. You learned that not every opinion deserves your consideration, and not every concern deserves your pause. Now your decisiveness is your signature, and it should be. You've learned that real power isn't in debating endlessly. It's in knowing when to decide, and trusting yourself enough to follow through. Ruthlessness isn't cruelty, it's clarity. You stopped being their puppet of self-doubt, and that's when you became unstoppable. Number 4, you mastered the art of strategic mystery. You stopped living out loud where everyone could track your moves and sabotage your plans. You learned that broadcasting your strategy gives away your advantage, and transparent players are easy to outmaneuver. So you evolved. You stopped announcing your moves, your timelines, and your goals. You became a ghost in plain sight, calm on the surface, lethal beneath. You learned how to move without leaving a trail. Now every decision you make and every move you make could mean a dozen different things to a dozen different people. And that unsettles people who once thought they knew exactly what you were planning. Naysayers hate what they can't see coming. Their power depends on information, on being able to predict, prepare, and counter. But now they have no clue whether your silence means you're scared or striking. They don't know if your patience is doubt or dominance. You've blurred the lines intentionally, not to deceive but to protect your power. That mystery keeps them second-guessing themselves, and second-guessing is exhausting for people who need certainty to operate. The more they try to decode you, the more lost they become. It's like trying to track smoke. You learned that strategic silence is not about hiding, it's about hunting. When people can't predict you, they can't prepare for you. You made your plans a locked vault only accessible to those who've earned the right to witness your vision. That shift made your strategy a fortress. Every assumption people make about you now says more about their fears than it does about your intentions. You let their speculation expose their weaknesses while you stay locked on your target. This kind of strategic composure is rare. It takes conviction, restraint, and unshakable belief to not share every detail with the world. You've become quantum, calm yet devastating, silent yet unstoppable, mysterious yet inevitable. People can sense your power, but they can't locate the source. That's what makes your presence unsettling and electrifying at the same time. They don't know what version of you they're dealing with, and that uncertainty is power in its purest form. You're no longer readable. You're lethal in your precision and invisible in your approach. Number 5, you redefined what dominance looks like. And that's why people don't know how to match you anymore. The world taught everyone that dominance had to be aggressive. It had to dominate every room with volume, force, and intimidation tactics. But you moved differently. You didn't compete for control. You became it without even raising an eyebrow. You discovered that true dominance doesn't need to announce itself. It simply dominates. You stopped using pressure and started using presence. You realized that forcing your way is what weak decision-makers do to convince themselves they're winning. You don't have to overcompensate anymore because your energy already shifts rooms when you decide. People sense your conviction, your certainty, your quiet dominance, and it shakes them. You've made calm more powerful than chaos and precision, sharper than aggression. That's a rare kind of influence, one that doesn't demand respect, but absolutely commands it. Your dominance isn't about overpowering others. It's about understanding strategy so deeply that their tactics no longer register. You don't respond to challenges with emotion. You respond with cold calculation. You see through bluffs, through games, through smokescreens. You've turned strategic thinking into your greatest weapon. The more you understand, the less they can compete. And that's what makes you a legend. Understanding strips leverage away from those who depend on confusion. You've also made decisiveness your strategy. You no longer seek approval or need validation. You let your results speak for you. That kind of presence unsettles people who expect you to justify your choices. You don't give them the reaction they're fishing for. You let them choke on their own doubts. You've turned conviction into a kind of psychological dominance that forces people to confront themselves. What you've done is revolutionary. You took power out of indecision and placed it back into action. You made certainty, commitment, and strategic ruthlessness the new symbols of strength. People now fear disappointing you more than they ever feared being confronted by others. That's the mark of true dominance. It doesn't dominate, it devastates, and you've mastered it with ice-cold precision. Number 6, you forced people to confront their own weakness of will. And it wasn't because you tried to. It happened naturally just by being absolute in who you are. Your determination exposed the indecision they tried so hard to hide. They called you extreme not because you were reckless or uncaring, but because your commitment reflected their lack of it. When you refused to waver under pressure, they had to face the uncomfortable truth. They would have folded where you stood firm. That's not arrogance, that's authority. You became a mirror that showed them their own lack of spine. And not everyone can handle that kind of reflection. You operate from a level of conviction most people never develop. You decide before reacting, commit before seeking approval, and execute before asking for permission. That boldness unsettles those who rely on endless debate to feel safe. They need people who second-guess themselves, who can be talked out of things, convinced to wait, or pressured into paralysis. But your certainty doesn't give them that opening anymore. You don't need their blessing. You don't beg for their understanding. And you don't need their vote of confidence. That alone dismantles entire power dynamics built on collective doubt. What most people don't realize is that strength isn't about being loud. It's about mastery over your own hesitation. You've trained yourself to remain resolute in situations designed to make you waver. You don't need to explain or justify because your track record already says more than explanations could. And that conviction exposes others. When they can't shake you, they reveal just how dependent they are on their safety nets. When they can't slow you down, their own fragility starts to surface. That's why your energy feels threatening to people who are mentally weak. You force them to face the difference between being cautious and being cowardly. You don't compete, and yet you still dominate. You don't announce your moves, and yet your results speak volumes. Every time you commit, you remind them how untrained their own willpower is. It's not that you overpower people. It's that you hold your ground while others stay frozen. You didn't expose their weakness by calling it out. You exposed it by refusing to join them in their doubt. That's the kind of strength that doesn't just earn respect, it commands it. Number 7, you moved from asking permission to taking charge, and that's when the whole game changed. You realized that constantly seeking approval is a trap. It keeps you stuck begging for validation from people who are committed to keeping you small. So you stopped. You stopped waiting for green lights, stopped begging for understanding, stopped wasting energy on people who twist your ambition into something ugly. You shifted from playing small to becoming the architect. And that's where real power lives, in the ability to shape your own future. You understood that whoever controls their own decisions controls their destiny. When you stopped asking and started taking what you wanted, you gained leverage. You became intentional with your choices, strategic with your moves, and ruthless with your focus. You don't ask for permission to live your best life anymore, only the moves that serve your vision. That level of self-ownership makes people uncomfortable, especially those who once thrived on you needing them. They can no longer control your trajectory because you learned how to drive your own car. Now your dreams don't need their blessing. They need your action. You don't seek validation to prove you're serious. You let results speak. You learned that people don't remember your doubts. They remember your dominance, so you became the architect instead of the follower. You turned every naysayer, every obstacle, every wall into fuel that only accelerated your rise. You took back control from doubt by refusing to feed it. That discipline made your ambition more powerful than any discouragement ever could. Taking charge doesn't mean being reckless. It means mastering your own path. You understand timing, risk, and reward. You know when to move, when to strike, and when to let momentum do the work. You've realized that boldness is influence and action is persuasion. That's why your strategy now feels like a weapon. It's not tentative, it's triumphant. You're no longer trying to fit in. You're building empires. Every move you make reshapes your reality because you no longer wait for permission. You decide where the narrative goes. And in a world addicted to playing it safe, that kind of decisive power is strength few ever achieve. Number 8, you realized hesitation isn't protection. Action is. You stopped waiting for the perfect moment because you finally understood that hesitation is surrender disguised as caution. They told you to wait, to be patient, to be realistic. But what they really meant was stay small. They wanted you to overthink, overplan, and overanalyze until the moment passed. But you learned that when you wait too long, you stop respecting yourself and start doubting everything. So you pulled the trigger, not out of recklessness but out of resolve. You stopped waiting for life to happen and started making it happen. Action makes people uncomfortable because it puts them in a position they can't control. They're left watching, and in that watching, they reveal their excuses, their fears, and their own paralysis. You noticed how people began to project their doubts, regrets, and frustrations onto you, simply because you had the courage they didn't. You didn't need their support or explanation. Your action did the work for you. Decisive action turns momentum into currency. And now, you own the market. The truth is, action doesn't make you careless. It makes you committed. You choose what's worth fighting for, and you allow momentum and results to prove your point. When you stopped waiting, you created a track record of wins that speaks louder than any excuse. That momentum gave you an advantage. People respect action when they can't match it. They become loyal when they can't keep up. And those who used to mock your impatience now spend hours trying to catch up. That's influence. Action is the art of controlled momentum, executing just enough to be known but never enough to be satisfied. It's not recklessness, it's mastery. You've learned that the more you act, the more powerful your presence becomes. People are addicted to safety, and you've turned that addiction into your disadvantage. You no longer chase perfection through inaction. You create legacy through execution. The more you do, the more your capability grows. You've proven that action isn't the absence of thought, it's the completion of it. And now every step you take speaks louder than any promise ever could. Number 9, you learned to think from the end, not from panic. And that shifted everything about how you operate. Most people move through life reacting to what's happening right in front of them. They respond to fear, to doubt, to short-term pressure, and they let anxiety dictate every choice. That's why they stumble, why they never finish, and why they constantly feel like they're falling behind. You, however, flipped the script. You stopped reacting and started envisioning the end game first. You see the victory in your mind and let that vision guide every single step. Every move is intentional because it's aligned with a predetermined outcome, not a fleeting emotion. This kind of thinking gives you a clarity most people will never know. You don't waste energy debating whether a decision is comfortable in the moment. Instead, you measure it against the vision. You ask yourself, will this bring me closer to the legacy I've already seen? If the answer is yes, you act without hesitation. If the answer is no, you redirect without guilt or doubt. That's why your results feel inevitable to outsiders. They see the outcome and assume luck. But in reality, it's a calculated process invisible to the untrained eye. Thinking from the end also gives you immunity to distractions and manipulation. While others are caught in the moment of chaos trying to figure out the next step, you're already 3 moves ahead. You anticipate obstacles, understand potential setbacks, and have contingency plans in place before the first challenge even arises. That foresight turns problems into predictable steps rather than crisis. It's not reaction, it's domination. This method doesn't just make you effective, it makes you inevitable. People who underestimate you assume you're moving without a plan, but the truth is you've already mapped the victory in your mind. Every action, every move, every decision is weighed against a vision only you can see. That's why you rarely lose. Strategy, when anchored in a clear endgame, always beats short-term panic. You've mastered the art of operating from the finished product backward, and that's why your moves land like clockwork. Every step you take is a step towards certainty, and everyone else is just scrambling to react. Number 10, you no longer chase comfort. You are the storm. You stopped shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that couldn't contain your ambition. For years, you tried to match people's comfort zones, lower your intensity, or soften your edge just to be accepted. But at some point you realized that constant shrinking was soul murder, disguised as humility. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to dominate. And once you embraced that, everything changed. You became the force instead of the follower. Now your presence alone shifts entire rooms. You walk into spaces and people start recalibrating without even knowing why. It's not intimidation, it's inevitability. Your energy exposes where others are asleep. The comfortable feel exposed. The stagnant feel challenged, and the bold feel finally found their match. All because your energy reflects what's possible. You've reached a level of self-awareness where you don't chase excitement anymore. You create it. You've become the catalyst, not the bystander. That kind of energetic dominance isn't loud or showy. It's subtle, but it's felt deeply. People can't fake it or replicate it. They either rise to meet it or get left behind. You've noticed how certain individuals who once felt superior around you now seem small. It's because your intensity demands excellence. Your boldness exposes mediocrity. Your drive reveals laziness. And your clarity highlights confusion. You don't have to call anyone out. Your energy does the work silently. Being the storm also means you stopped looking for safe harbor. You no longer need approval to confirm your direction. You trust your conviction more than you trust comfort. You understand that your drive is your compass, and when it's clear, everything else bends naturally. You became the source of the intensity you were once searching for in others. This isn't arrogance, it's awakening. It's what happens when you stop chasing safety and become unstoppable. You don't fit into comfortable spaces anymore. Spaces now reshape around you. People can feel that something about you operates differently. That hunger you carry, that focus, that absolute certainty. You're not trying to survive anymore. You are survival itself. And that right there is what true power looks like. Number 11, you turned failure into ammunition, and that changed the way you see everything. What once felt like setbacks became your greatest fuel. Every rejection, every loss, every closed door sharpened your edge. While others ran from failure, you studied it. You paid attention to where it hurt, how it tried to stop you, and how it reappeared in different forms throughout your journey. Over time, your wounds became weapons, showing you exactly where to strike and where to protect. Failure hardened your resolve until it became unbreakable. Now you don't need long explanations or validation. You can sense opportunities where others see disaster. You notice shifts, openings, and chances others miss. You've learned how to spot advantage in what looks like defeat, not because you're numb, but because your experience trained you to see the silver lining behind every cloud. What used to destroy you now announces itself as a turning point. Failure didn't just toughen you, it recalibrated your perspective. You no longer confuse failure with the end, mistake with defeat, or loss with impossibility. That resilience was born in struggle. Every time failure tried to write you off, it only fueled your comeback. Now when plans fall apart, you don't panic, you pivot, you don't freeze, you strategize. You can turn disasters into breakthroughs because your failures turned into fuel, and that fuel became your engine. That's the difference between defeat and evolution. Defeat keeps you down. Evolution uses the fall as a launch pad. You didn't let failure define you. You used it to build an unbreakable mindset. You learned that failure has a language, and you became fluent in turning it into your favor. That's why others can't shake you anymore. They're still operating at surface level while you've become battle-hardened in the depths. What they call obsessive or too intense is actually your calibration, a spirit forged to find advantage in every disadvantage before it even becomes apparent. You've developed a rare kind of fearlessness that can't be taught in classrooms. Failure gave you that. It forced you to see victory without illusion, to understand without fear, and to move without hesitation. You didn't just survive what broke others, you reverse-engineered it. Now, what once defeated you has become the very fire that powers you. Number 12, you discovered the language of cold precision, and it's not about being emotionless. You discovered the language of cold precision, and it completely changed how you operate. Cold precision isn't about being heartless or ignoring feelings. It's about taking control over every decision without getting derailed by emotion. It's knowing when your feelings are necessary and when your logic carries more weight than 1,000 emotional pleas. You learn that clarity is currency, and every time you lead with your head instead of your heart, you're investing in your future. Cold thinking became your most precise tool because it forces others to match your rationality, not your chaos. This kind of precision is a weapon disguised as discipline. People who once thrived on your emotional decisions find themselves outmaneuvered because they can no longer predict or manipulate your choices. When you refuse to be moved by feelings, you take away their playbook. Every appeal to your emotions, every pressure tactic, every attempt to guilt you falls flat because you've claimed the authority to decide with your mind, not your heart. Cold precision gives you the ability to see clearly what serves you and what doesn't. It cuts through noise simply through logic and focus. The genius of this language is that it communicates more than passion ever could. Your strategic thinking signals intelligence, control, and vision. It communicates judgment without compassion, and it communicates strength without aggression. People start to realize that you are fully aware of their tactics, yet you choose not to validate them with emotional reactions. That choice forces them to confront their own irrationality, to question their emotional decisions, and to recognize that feelings no longer work on you. Every time you lead with logic, you assert control over outcomes without engaging in drama. Your precision becomes magnetic, compelling others to match your clarity. It transforms conversations into negotiations where your strategic mind alone dictates the terms. What looks like coldness is actually strategy. What seems like detachment is actually dominance. You learned that passion can dilute focus, but cold precision, when wielded consistently, dominates everything. By mastering the language of cold precision, you turn the calculated into the unstoppable. You communicate power without noise, control without chaos, and clarity without compromise. In a world addicted to feelings over facts, your precision becomes your loudest statement, and it reshapes every space you enter. Every calculated move multiplies your influence, proving that real power is not in feeling, but in executing with perfection. Number 13. You exposed that boldness is the new charisma. In a culture that glorifies playing it safe and seeking approval, your willingness to go all in to risk it all is practically magnetic. Most people are programmed to wait for permission, to seek validation, to play it safe. Their worth depends on being accepted, not achieved. But you broke that cycle. You stopped seeking applause and started seeking impact. You realized that real power isn't in being liked, it's in being respected. Your boldness disrupts systems built on mediocrity. The world doesn't actually want risk-takers. It wants followers because followers are easier to manage. But when you step up, commit fully, and move without hesitation, you become unavoidable. They can't discourage you, can't talk you out of it, can't slow you down with doubt. You became immune to peer pressure because you recognize it before it starts. Your boldness now feels dangerous to those who thrive on playing small because it exposes how little courage they actually have. Boldness has become charisma because it forces admiration. When you go all in, people who live on the sidelines feel inadequate. When you bet on yourself instead of seeking approval, you challenge an entire system addicted to mediocrity. That's why your boldness inspires, not because it's loud, but because it's authentic. It ignites quietly. You don't brag, you execute. You don't perform, you deliver. And that level of commitment threatens those who depend on playing small to feel relevant. What makes your boldness even more compelling is how unshakable it is. You're not seeking to prove how brave you are. You're using your courage as a tool for transformation. You decide before you doubt yourself, and that alone separates you from a generation that confuses caution with wisdom. Your commitment has become your identity, your reputation, your legend. You've turned daring into destiny. In a world where everyone is hedging, your all-in approach is the calm eye in the storm of mediocrity. Not because it's reckless, but because it's deliberate. You remind people that boldness is not reckless. It's the ultimate form of self-trust. You're living proof that in a time where everyone is trying to fit in, the real attraction is standing out. Courage has always been magnetic. You just made it undeniable. Number 14. You became the standard. No one can match it. For a long time, people could dismiss your ambition, call your goals unrealistic, and treat your drive like a phase. You used to wonder if something was wrong with you, why you always felt like you were meant for more, why you never fit in with the comfortable. But that phase ended the moment you stopped apologizing for your standards. Now, when people try to pull you down, your results bounce right back at them. You don't absorb their mediocrity anymore. You let it reveal the person who released it. You've reached a level of self-respect where naysayers can't find an opening. You no longer seek validation, which means discouragement doesn't move you. You no longer fear judgment, which means doubt doesn't control you. You've outgrown the need for approval because you understand your worth, and that terrifies people who used to feed off your insecurity. They can't minimize your goals because you now speak from conviction. They can't dismiss your vision because your progress exposes their excuses. You've become a benchmark that forces people to face themselves honestly, raw, unfiltered, and uncomfortable. That's why some people can't stand being around you anymore. It's not that you changed, it's that you became too powerful. Your energy no longer offers them a comfortable excuse. Every dismissal, every criticism, every attempt to hold you back bounces back and shows them what they truly lack. You're not fighting them. You're just no longer volunteering to be held to their level. Your standard became a wall they can't breach. You don't fight excuses. You let success do the talking for you. Being this kind of standard doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you're principled. Excellence is your standard. Now you let people reveal themselves through how they react to your growth. The lazy will call you intense. The comfortable will call you obsessive. But deep down, they know the truth. You see too clearly to be held back. You've become unstoppable not because you hide your standards, but because you live them. You operate like a force of nature, relentless in pursuit, unshaken by critics, unmoved by doubt. Your ambition no longer bends under pressure. It grows stronger with every obstacle. They can't discourage excellence. They can't diminish what demands everything. You became the standard. and that's why they can't match you anymore. What you've just realized is that true power doesn't live in hesitation, in safety, or in the approval of others. It lives in boldness, in commitment, and in the mastery of your own destiny. Every move you've made, every shift in thinking, and every layer of discipline you've cultivated has transformed your presence into something far beyond ordinary success. You stopped waiting and started executing. You turned doubt into determination, fear into fuel, and hesitation into unstoppable momentum. You no longer chase approval. You set the standard. You are the bar others unconsciously adjust to. You don't just exist in rooms, you dominate them. People who once thought they could hold you back are now forced to confront their own limitations. Those who tried to minimize, doubt, or slow you down are left reflecting on their own small thinking because your ambition no longer settles for less. It demands everything and settles for nothing less. Every attempt to dim your light only exposes the small-mindedness they've been hiding all along. You've become the invisible force that can't be challenged because your power isn't in what you say, but in what you do. Your decisions have become your weapon, your commitment has become your armor, and your boldness has become the new standard where the outcome is already inevitable. This is the level of mastery few ever reach. It's not luck, timing, or chance. It's the result of deliberate evolution, discipline, and unapologetic ambition. You've moved from being held back by circumstance to breaking through with sheer will, from being reactive to being proactive, from being ordinary to being extraordinary. And the most extraordinary part, you didn't have to shrink to fit in. You didn't need to apologize for your ambition or demand permission. You simply committed to your vision, honed your edge, and became the standard others are now struggling to meet. That's the difference between average ambition and unstoppable legacy. If this message resonates with you, if you feel the shift and the weight of what it means to operate at this level, then don't let it stop here. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss content that ignites your drive and sharpens your edge. Like this video to honor the boldness you've awakened within yourself. Comment below to share your breakthroughs, your commitments, and your boldest decisions. Your voice adds to this growing wave of unstoppable energy. And share this video with those who are ready to stop playing small, to decide boldly, and to become the standard. The way of thinking that changes everything is not for the faint of heart. It's for those willing to rise. You're already there. God bless.